everybody. We'll get started shortly. My name is Lucian Fogoros. So I want to welcome you to IoT World Days. Your track facilitator is Alicia, and Alicia, you have the floor.
Thank you, Lucian. An ability to recover from or adjust easily to misfortune or change. This is the definition that Merriam-Webster Dictionary provides for resilience. Thank you all for joining us today in this panel about business resilience. It seems very appropriate to handle this issue in the middle of the COVID crisis. Although I expect that our panelists handle also other kind of misfortunes and changes that our companies may suffer along their lives and how digital services can help to solve them. I am very glad to welcome on stage Joe Barkai, Paco Maroto, and Stéphane Marabel to this panel. They will today bring us three different and equally interesting experiences in the use of IoT, industrial IoT for business and operations. Before we continue, just a brief reminder that at the end of the session, we will have some minutes, around 10 minutes for questions. You can type your questions at any time in the Q&A part of the webinar, and I will connect those questions and ask them at the end of the session to the panelists. Please name the panelists you want to address the question, and remember that the questions are not anonymous, so your name, we will know who is doing the comments. You can also comment in the social media, via social media, using the hashtag IIoT World Days. And the recording of the presentations will be available within more or less 7 days, and we'll have the PDF presentations as well. So welcome on board Joe Barkai, Paco Maroto, and Stéphane Marabel. As I said, Joe will be the first to talk today. Joe is a recognized industry analyst, strategist, and he used to work for IDC at some point. He's a futurist, he's a published author. He focused mainly on how advanced technologies can be articulated in the business to produce more value. He's got more than 30 years experience across diverse industries. And now he's focused on industrial Internet of Things, robotics, autonomous vehicles, smart mobility, and artificial intelligence. In his book, The Outcome Economy, he explores the impact of the industrial Internet of Things on the manufacturing industry and offers a perspective on product, innovation, and operation in an always connected world. Today, Joe will present us with the idea of the outcome economy. That means how clients are not more looking to buy products, but rather they buy a complete solution that provides them with measurable results. Being a resilience company in this case means adjusting to this new environment, and Joe will give us some good hints about it. Joe, the floor is yours now.
Thank you so much, Alicia, and thanks especially Lucian and the team for putting together this event. And of course, we need to, as we are getting used to new means of meeting and presentation, of course, we have to kind of teach ourselves new tools every day. But yeah, I'd like to really share with you some observations about industry overall, about the Internet of Things, about how I see the future and what is the role of technology. And the reason why this image in front of you is because it may be a surprise for many of you, but I will maintain that your organization suffers from acute myopia. Almost any organization that I know suffers from myopia in the sense that once the product is built and released to the field, the organization loses sight of the product. How well it does, how well it meets of objectives, how well it compares to the competition. More importantly, how well the product works with the customer. What is about the interaction? We usually have very, very little knowledge of that. And in fact, when we do have knowledge of these kind of interactions, it tends to be negative in the form of customer complaints and warranty claims and field service calls. So over time, we lose more and more information about our product and our customers. And no surprise, therefore, that our future products tend to be based on those very limited, very myopic view of products. So very often by the time when we get to developing a new product, we based product specifications, market definitions, customer definition, we base those on old and stale data. We really do not have up-to-date information about what market needs. No surprise, therefore, that many products fail. And this talks about products alone. And you've seen these numbers before, and there's so many studies, and the numbers vary. And it's really not as important to worry about which number is more precise as saying, A, most products disappoint. They may not fail, but they disappoint. B, many of the reasons that you see listed on the chart there are kind of mundane. I mean, not knowing the customer or developing a product for that the market did not have a need for, or failing because not knowing that the competition sounds like a little bit of a bad excuse rather than good understanding how products operate. So no wonder, again, products fail very, very frequently in the marketplace. But things are changing, slowly but changing. We are in the Internet of Things era. We are in an era where everybody and everything is connected. And whenever I talk about the industrial Internet of Things, both industrial actually and Internet of Things overall, I want to highlight that the Internet of Things is not only about connecting devices. Yes, the fundamental idea of the industrial Internet of Things and Industry 4.0 was based on connecting industrial assets. So taking assets, instrumenting them if they were not already connected, and connect all these sensors and data acquisition units to management, to overall corporation, to field service, making those devices connected, and thereby knowing more about their operation and about the quality, knowing more about perhaps the quality of output so we can predict failure. Of course, you know, the number one story and use case for the Internet of Things tends to be predictive maintenance. So these are all true, and these are all very relevant, and we know that even though we, as an analyst, I see very slow adoption, very disappointingly slow adoption, but in part it's not because the idea is wrong or the Internet of Things is not a good idea, but rather industries, especially manufacturing industries, have a very slow cadence of innovation. It has to do with the life cycle of products, has to do with the regulations, has to do with markets. So the slow adoption was actually expected. But again, the point I want to highlight here is that when I say Internet of Things, I don't only mean instrumented connected devices. I also mean connected enterprise systems. The ability to connect enterprise software systems, ERP and CRM and others, to get better, broader context for better insight, and maybe take this insight and couple it with the instrumentation data that that the Internet of Things gives us. Apologize. Moreover, we can get to the point now that we can connect customers to the world of Internet of Things. And here again, I don't mean wearable devices. Yes, they are relevant. In some applications, very, very useful to have wearable devices. Think about telemedicine and personal medicine. Yeah, it makes a lot of sense. But it does not mean only wearable devices. I put a lot of emphasis on understanding products and markets, as we discussed earlier, through the eyes or the lens of social media. So here, customers are connected indirectly through social media, but feeding us information about the product, how much they like them or not, how well they interact with them, and their thoughts about our brand. So the Internet of Things is a very broad idea as opposed to just connecting instrumented devices, which really brings us to the notion of the outcome economy. And please forgive me for that. What do I mean by the outcome economy? This is a little bit of a dated example, but I keep using it because to me is a good archetype of outcome economy, and it's not really industrial. So again, it helps give us broader context for the notion. So when Renfe, the Spanish rail system, built the high-speed rail between Madrid, Malaga, and Barcelona, most of the traffic was by air. I think 60 or 70% of traffic between these three cities was by air. And then Renfe introduced high-speed rail, and one of them you can see here, and it introduced a very unusual customer engagement model. They offered money-back guarantee. the money back guarantee was in the form of, if the train is late to arrive, not to depart, to arrive its destination by more than 15 minutes, then the customer gets their money back, which for most of us sounds like a losing proposition. All trains are late every time, so what's the point? But the way Renfe built the system, designed the system, is that they, on the one hand, had contract between them and the customer to deliver the customer to his destination on time. At the same time, they had a contract with a train builder. Siemens was one, I think this one is Alstom, but we have the train and rail maintainers to provide them guaranteed uptime. So now we have two contracts, each of them phrased in a way that discusses specific outcomes, but the outcomes are unique to the business goals. One unique outcome is on-time delivery, another unique goal is on time. So as a result, not only did customers like the idea and really flock to it, I think that now maybe 80% of the traffic in Spain along this route is via rail, but it really really highlighted the point of the outcome economy. And the best way to say it is using Theodore Levitt, who said, people do not want corner-inch drill bits. They want quarter-inch holes. Or the customer doesn't care about the train. The customer wants to get to her destination on time. So the outcome economy really says it's a system of connected devices, trains, but not only devices, also people, that enable new business models and customer engagement. In this case, again, giving the customer new type of service level agreement, phrased in user-defined outcomes, arrival as opposed to departure. And it typically, not always, but typically delivered by an ecosystem. Here, in order for Renfe to do what they did, they needed to have a contract with the train builders and manufacturers. So this, for me, is a great example of the outcome economy. Parenthetically, I need to get rid of some messages here. Parenthetically, I think that this agreement no longer agrees, so it no longer exists. So I think that Renfe is now back to more or less standard agreement. Nonetheless, the point I think is very important. Now, I talked so far about products and maybe innovation, but this is really not only about products, it's also about product operation and supply chain and delivery. And now we are kind of under the dark cloud of the coronavirus crisis. And what the crisis showed us is how fragile our supply chains are. For decades, starting after the Second World War, we're busy overlanding our supply chains. Think about Toyota production systems, think about Lean and Six Sigma and just in time. Everything was to cut costs and to minimize inventories and just do things just in time, which makes sense if you look at it from this lens. Moreover, more recently, we started borrowing methods from software development and say we can actually accelerate product development. We can go into agile methods by which we accelerate the iterative process of building prototypes and launching them and correcting them and coming back and doing this iteratively very, very fast. Again, it works. But the mistake we made is that we focus on those goals. So as stated, we met those goals: just in time, lean, reduce inventories, faster time to market, etc. What we did not see is the impact on those decisions on other parts of the life cycle, or other parts of the value chain. We didn't realize how fragile those supply chains are. So again, back to the theme of myopia, we looked at one area and we focused on this one without having good enough understanding or even enough knowledge to ask the question, what is the impact of our decisions, sometimes lack thereof, on downstream processes? And this is really where we need to rethink our models and our way of behaving. And, in all honesty, the coronavirus is really kind of, we are all still under this burden, but it's not the only crisis, natural disaster in memory. Just not even 10 years ago, we had the earthquake and the tsunami in Japan. And this tsunami brought the automotive industry to its knees. So it's almost ironic that Toyota, that worked so hard on leaning and removing waste and doing everything just in time and having very, very small number of suppliers was the first one to be hit by the tsunami. Because again, this very, very effective supply chain was also very, very brittle. And that was the difficulty in moving from a model that was fixed and highly optimized to something that's more dynamic and responsive. So again, just 10 years ago, and do we learn lessons? Will we remember? Apparently we did not remember the outcomes of the hurricane, the tsunami, and the earthquake and the tsunami in 2011. What makes us think that we'll be better this time and remember and draw the right conclusions? I think it's hard to tell. Just an interesting anecdote, there was a Harvard Business Review article, I don't know, maybe 5 years ago, that was titled something along the lines of why organizations do not learn. And it's a very, of course, in-depth article about what drives learning processes in an organization. But one interesting tidbit from that article was that when executives are interviewed and asked about success and failures, when there's a failure in the organization, they tend to blame outside events, or events outside of their control, just like coronavirus, just like the tsunami, just like an earthquake. So when we fail, it's outside of our realm, it's outside of our scope of control. Whereas when we succeed, all of a sudden it's our ability, our talent, our hard work. And I think it really talks a little bit about the psyche of learning and drawing conclusions. So to me, it's still a big question mark. How much will we retain after we reach the new normal? How much will we retain in a positive way? So of course, some of the things we're already learning, such as remote working and so on, that obviously will stay with us. And I think that the event we're now attending is a good indication how effective we can be even working remotely. Yes, it's not the same as face to face, but there's huge opportunities, huge advantages of doing remote events. Nevertheless, what do we do when we reach the new normal? And I want to ask the question differently. What if there's no new normal? What if there's no new normal? Because to me, when you talk about a new normal, it implies there's a model that describes the normal. And now there's a new crisis. So we discovered that our model doesn't work that well. So now we're going to change some parameters and adjust some coefficients, and we'll create a revision of the model, and we'll be happy for the next 5 or 10 years until the next one hits us and shows us how fragile our new model is. So what if this new normal, and what we need to get used to is really working under a continuous state of uncertainty. So how do we reach both efficiency and resilience under uncertainty? In kind of more philosophical or business philosophy point of view, how do we balance organizations' stability, which release the models? Lean supply chain is supposed to be stable because we know the economy, we know the suppliers, we know the geography and the locale and so on. So how do we balance stability versus vitality, the ability to detect events and respond very quickly, very efficiently to those, and then put it back into the operating model. So it's really efficiency and resilience under uncertainty, and that's going to be a challenge for all of us. But here again, the Internet of Things, I think, plays a huge role. It's not the answer, but it's a huge role. What we need to do in order to kind of prepare to this maybe no normal situation is to really focus on efficiency and accuracy. So first off, automation, and we'll see acceleration of the wave of automation. Everything that can be automated should be automated. There are some long-term ramifications as impact on the sales and on the workforce, and these are important questions. But specifically to the efficiency of the organization and the accuracy of the operation of the organization, we need to automate whatever we can. And we need to really curate complex, rich, multidisciplinary information that go throughout the entire value chain to give us the context to make better decisions, to detect when our new normal is not exactly the new normal. When we see events, and so we can put them in context and say what has changed so we can respond to it immediately and not necessarily kind of try to adjust and tweak the model. And a huge part of this, of course, is going to be decision support systems using artificial intelligence, AI, and simulation. So Said differently, it's really an accelerated model of decision-making, ongoing decision-making and adjustment of that stuff which is not automated. So it's really designing a new way of a new approach, a new strategy or operation strategy that allows us to operate better under uncertainty. So first off, we pick a model and we said, this is how we operate. And we continue to gauge this event or this model, this behavior and our response based on evidence-based analytics. It's really not about all data, as we said in the very outset. It's not about fixed models. It's really about evidence-based coming from the Internet of Things. And one more time, Internet of Things means also enterprise systems, social media, supplier ecosystem. It's not only our instrumented manufacturing asset. No, it's much more than that. And now we look at AI and simulation tools as a way to generate and evaluate different scenarios. So we have some sort of a status quo. What can go wrong? What can go wrong if there's an earthquake or another virus pandemic, or the geopolitical unrest? And we are very good in developing and doing those kind of analysis. In fact, in war theory, this is what they do. They plan war scenarios. What if this is the new scenario? What are the alternative ways of operation? And then what are responses? What happens if? And we can simulate these things very, very quickly and somewhat automatically to keep adjusting our models. So obviously, this is all about being very data-driven and using AI to help us be better and data-driven. And a small point, but it's really what triggers, what moves this circle around is early warning systems. So early warning system could be the old-fashioned ways, like inventory is low, profit margins are not where they're supposed to be. These are still relevant inputs. But another input would be the simulation model thinks that if there's a geopolitical risk with this kind of likelihood in this region, we may have a problem with supply chain. What do we do? Do we wait? Do we switch suppliers? Do we switch region? This is all the scenarios. These are the kind of the scenario book will contain those elements to base our next action and continue to reiterate. You know, this thinking brings us back to what around the turn of this century was used to call the real-time enterprise. And for me, the real-time enterprise is an old concept way before the digital twin of the Internet of Things, but it is what it is. It is the digital twin, because what the real-time enterprise gives us is what I just described as necessary for the new strategy. Multidisciplinary information from the entire value chain, including maybe of your suppliers, if they let you do that. It's in real time when necessary. It's in context. So it's not an isolated data point, but rather it's the context of a scenario I'm checking. So to reduce the big words about the Internet of Things, even connectivity, the point here is that this technology and the tools around it shortens the latency in information. And this is what we need to do in the new normal when we need to operate under uncertainty. Reduce the time to awareness and to action in order to survive the new crisis. So to sum up, this is a phrase that keeps coming up. There are so many claims to it, all the way from Churchill to Rahm Emanuel and to whoever. No, I actually researched this once, and the source is not quite known other than Machiavelli. His writing talked a lot about looking for opportunities in any crisis. So any crisis create disruption, create unrest, create opportunities to generate a new opportunity. So for you, for all of us, is the coronavirus crisis going to be yet another crisis? Are we all going to be focused on weathering the storm until we come out of it and go back to what we will consider as the new normal? Or is it really an opportunity to really rethink our entire strategy and build new models that will take us safely and robustly into the future? Thank you so much for attending, and I look forward to your questions.
Thank you, Joe. We will be collecting questions to the end. I've been working in product management for a while in my life, and I really enjoyed what you said about basing the design of the products in still data instead of using real or live data. So I get this with me for the future. We are gonna give the floor now to Francisco Paco Maroto He's the CEO and founder of OES Consulting. He has more than 2 decades of international experience in the IT and telco industries. And before founding OEIES, he worked in different management roles in companies like Microsoft, Oracle, SAP, HP, Vodafone India, and Matra. He's an entrepreneur, a visionary, a speaker, a blogger, an influencer, and he's a globally recognized IoT advisor and leader on the state-of-the-art Internet of Things. Paco today will handle a different challenge of what Joe has told us. He will speak about the challenge of democratizing industrial IoT. So how all the companies, regardless of their size or their previous knowledge or resources, they can implement these kind of technologies, and how they can succeed in adopting in industrial IoT. So Paco, the floor is yours. I would strongly recommend that you stay to the 15 minutes you have, please.
Okay, thank you, Alicia. Let me see if I can control the screen. Okay. Sorry. I assume that I am controlling the screen right now, correct? Okay. Yeah, it's complicated because I don't see the icons. Well, let me start for why I decided to choose this topic for this session. The reason was that when I launched my own company 6 years ago, and when I leave Microsoft, all my life, all my professional life, have been working with big companies, either as a provider or as a customer. And you don't see how difficult it is for the small and medium companies to survive before the coronavirus and after the coronavirus. It's always complicated, and I am living this situation in my house, in my own hands. So then I decided, why don't I talk about the situation of the small and medium companies, and why I believe, and one of my objectives when I launched the company is, how can I help these companies to democratize the industrial Internet of Things, or the IoT, but not only to democratize, that is maybe something that is not in my hand, but how can I help these companies to make the IoT more easy? How can they implement the solution more easy? Because otherwise they cannot take the advantage. And one of the reasons, because I was worried about the resilience of the small and medium companies, because when you see this number, and this is for the European Union, but I think that this applies to other regions and continents. So you see 99% of the companies are, small and medium companies. And probably for me, the sentence that impacts more is that all these companies, these are the responsible to create 85% of the employment in the private sector. So that means that we are proud to work in the Google, Microsoft, or Siemens, or all these big companies. However, the companies that sustain the countries, that sustain the economy, there are the small and medium companies. And these small and medium companies, they have many challenges, and they all need some technologies, not only industrial Internet technologies. They need more technology to be able to compete with the big brands. They need to create the solution or the product, like Joe said at the beginning, in a very efficient way. They don't have time to failure. They have, a reduced number of consumers if they don't spend millions to reach the market without the technology. So there are many challenges. One of the main challenges I found when I talk with these small companies is the lack of talents. They cannot recruit 5 or 6 data executive or solution architect or whatever. They need to focus on the business, and they don't have the possibility to have internally a group of people. That's why the democratization of some technologies can help and take advantage of this company. And let me go to this slide. When I was preparing this presentation, I think I was invited by Lucian and Caroline, and I think thank you very much for the invitation. But we don't have yet the COVID, so I prepared the first draft of the presentation before the COVID. But then we was all surprised by the coronavirus, and then everything changed. And I was looking at some surveys. One of the surveys that I found more interesting is this survey. Is in only 10 days, you see, in these 10 days from March 20, when you asked question about the impact of the COVID to the small and medium companies, the negatively impact that the coronavirus said that this company will suffer grow from 23 to 78%, and this was only end of March. I cannot imagine in April or May, because I think that the things has not been much better. So nobody was expecting this, suddenly, inconvenient or something that is proving us that we don't have the perfect model, like Joy said before. We are adapting every time our model, because this is the only way to survive. And in this new model, the small and medium companies need to make bigger effort. So no, sorry, it's not changing my screen. Okay, so what happened when they start understanding what is the coronavirus and what is the situation between the employees, between the providers, and between the customer? But the first thing that they recognize that they don't have the tools. And I'm not talking about the industrial internet, I'm not talking about digital twin or sensor or platform or whatever. They need to be able to allow the customer to connect with them, to talk with the customer. They need to send the employees to home and start working from home. They need to adapt new model. They need to reduce costs because some project was delayed. So there was a lot of inconvenience for these small and medium companies, also for the big one, but I'm not talking today about the big one because they have a lot of people thinking about, this kind of problems, and they have some scenarios, etc., etc. But for the small companies, they need to react in a very quick way and be able to continue with the, especially in the business that the government and the situation allow to continue with business, because otherwise they was obliged to close the business and to fire many people. So and I think that this was for me a good lesson for resilience of many of these companies. Very quickly, these companies start using, and I think that I don't see in the history of my life so many remote session, so many learning, companies, employees of the companies learning different kind of tools, etc., just to communicate between themselves, to communicate with the manager, with the customer, with the providers. So there was a quick adaptation for the small and medium companies. And they, of course, they have reduced part of their revenues, and they need probably in the next months to win part of the loss in the last months. But I think that in the last 3 months, they learned that they need to, be more agile, that they need the technology in a way that for years they have, forget not, but don't consider as important. So I think that this is a good lesson for the small and medium enterprise that until now they has been rejected to talk about introduce new technologies into their business. And I think that the only thing to survive and the only thing to grow and to thrive is to survive. So the most challenging for the most of the company right now is how can they survive. So when I read in not only in Spain but in other countries how many companies will disappear or how many companies are now firing people because they cannot support all the, the cost of these people or of the situation. So I think it's very important that they need to think in how can we survive. So important thing now is focus on survive and then use the right technologies to thrive and to grow. Now, but what is the problem for the small and medium companies? But the reality is that when I visit the customer, and for me it was a new experience when I started talking with the small and medium companies, because when you talk with these companies, you don't have a CTO, a CEO, or you don't have so many C-level. You have people who has been working in the industry, in the segment for 20, for 30, for 40 years. Sometimes the company are familiar and they have a lot of experience and a lot of knowledge in what they do, but they are not familiar with the technology. And what I see is that these companies receive many vendors from different, products and services, and they receive a bomb of new messages about the Industry 4.0, the digital twin, the big data, the cloud, etc. And they don't understand. They don't have the resources internally to understand, and they don't have the time to understand. They cannot spend too much time to understand. They know that they need it, but they cannot understand this incredible number of technology. That's why one of my mission with these small companies is try to help with the strategy, try to help to minimize the effort in the election of not the technology, the solution, and become that this all technology that probably they need, or some of them that they need for the business, they can be invisible. So they don't need to see the technology. What they need to see is the outcome, like Joe said at the beginning, the outcome of this technology. And that's why I insist very much with this company about the need to, for instance, create new business model, to create, new services, to connect some assets that they have deployed in different countries, to be able to monitor, to offer additional services. So I was explaining different kind of use cases and different business model in which the companies can compete with the large brands and be more effective because they have something that are more beneficial for the customer, that is the proximity or the quality of services on things like that.
4 minutes left now, Paco.
Yeah, so now very quickly. So in like I said, in general, why is important to democratize the technology? Because not all the technologies are, simple. Not all the technology are not expensive. So we need to make sure that all the small and medium companies, they have the same tools, they have the same characteristics to, be able to adapt this technology for the business. And we need to understand that the new development that the big companies are doing in AI or IoT or digital twin or cloud or quantum computing, this is very good for the big companies because they can use it. But we don't need to forget that it's important that the small and medium companies use this, because otherwise they will not continue the supply chain and they will not generate the employees, so they cannot, offer employees, and then we can, only be manipulated by robots. So there's only a couple of minutes. So I think that it's true that the big companies are sending to the market new tools that now is more easy to, prove and test something that in the past was very expensive. I think that every of these companies, the Microsoft, the Amazon, all of these, IBM, Google, also Alibaba in China, all of these companies promise that they are democratizing the AI, the technology, so every people can use it. It's not expensive, you can test, etc. But I think that first they only, offer these free services after they test it, and after, it's like when I was working in some project in defense, and I was working with the Americans. The Americans provide the Spanish the technology, one generation later. So they always reserve to have the more innovative generation for themselves. So this is what I believe for the big companies. They are democratizing the technology, but I don't think that they are very clever about this, or they are not clear. So I think that they need to be, or we need to be sure that they are democratizing everything that they have, not only what they want at the time what they want. And the other thing is, I also was supporting many startups, and I was thinking with this startup, why are you not able to provide this technology as the big ones? Why are not your technologies, be used by other small and medium companies in different sectors, in manufacturing, retail, etc.? The reality is that it's possible because many of these startups are using open source code, and this is more easy for in terms of cost, etc., and service. But for the startups, the technology startup, they have a lot of issues when they trying to democratize, because sometimes they don't have all the talent internally. They need to hire some freelance. They need to validate the solution, and sometimes they don't know the markets. It's like Joe said in his presentation, they create products and services that nobody asks. It's just because they are technology. So sometimes they receive some funding, but after 1 year or 2 years, unless a company, a big company, acquire the company, they disappear because the technology is not used, or nobody needs this technology or the product. So I think that the startups need change in the way they are approaching to the market. I think that also the organization in Europe, in investors, etc., need to change the way in which they invest in these companies. Just focus more on the long term, on the resilience of the companies, and not just to make and invest in a company that in 3 years need to be sold and they want to get the money back. So this is something that we need to change, in my opinion. And finally, something that I want you to remember in my presentation is we have been talking about the IT and OT convergences in the industrial Internet of Things. And again, when would you have discussion with the companies, with the CEO of the company, or with the different manager, director of the company, you see that there is a big resilience to the change. So there is, and I always said, there is not about the technology that IT introduce new security risks, that they introduce new methodologies or new problems to the typical OT SCADAs, PLC companies that has been working for 20 or 30 years. So it's not that then they want to move the data to the cloud that they don't understand, etc. Is the most problematic thing for the IT, OT convergence, and the way in which not only the big companies, but also the small and medium companies. So this is not something that I see in the big company. There are also in the medium companies and small companies. So it's about the convergence, and the convergence need to be in 3 levels. The first level is the people. So if people are not interested in the change, it will be very difficult to make the change. So you need to engage with the people first. You need to think about the processes. So technology is the last layer of this. Technology is an enabler. Technology is something that can help to improve the process, to change the process, to create a new process. But the people are, at the end of the day, responsible to execute, to deliver the project. And until we have, the world dominated by robots, I think that the most important thing for us is to take care about the people. So just to summarize my presentation, I think that the small and medium companies need technologies to survive and to grow. Without this technology, it's impossible, not only because of the coronavirus, it's because maybe in 1 year they will have another, or we will have in the world or in the country, we will have. So technology is necessary to compete, to survive. That's necessary if you want to go to lunch and you cannot go to a restaurant. The restaurant need to provide you some online services in which you can continue, buying the lunch for you. So, and there's not excuse. to close so many bars or restaurant or hotel because you don't have to be prepared for that. And the same thing with the democratization. You think that all the technologies are available, but it's not true. Not all the technologies are available. We need to make sure that all technologies are available for the small and medium companies. We need to make that the small and medium companies trust more in the technology providers, and that they need to also trust in the independent consultant because they will help to be more competitive in the world. And finally, just to finish my presentation, sorry Alicia and the rest of the people, is don't forget that any company, doesn't matter if it's small, medium or big, they need 3 pillars: people, process, and technology. Without the 3 and the good work between the 3, it's impossible for our companies to survive in the future. So it's very important that we make an emphasis in the perfect integration between people, process, and technology. And that's it. So thank you very much for being here today, and I look forward for your question at the end. Thank you.
Thank you, Francisco. It's very interesting to see how your presentation fits with what Joe said before, how these smaller companies are probably part of the value chain that Joe was presenting at the beginning. So, and how all the pieces are coming together. Before we continue, just I have negotiated with Lucian some more time. So Stefan, don't worry, you don't have to rush. You have your time, and we still will have some extra time for questions, even if we go over the time we have previously arranged. So now we are moving to Stefan. Stefan is Vice President of Strategy, Global Marketing and Digital Services at Schneider Electric, based in France. He's 25 years experience in the energy management world, and he has got experience from power generation to distribution and to services related to all this energy management. He's an engineer and an MBA, and he has developed half of his career in industrial operations and half of his career leading international businesses, which gives him a really good idea of what resilience may mean for both parts. Stefan and Schneider have got a lifelong experience in helping companies to be resilient by improving their businesses with business continuity plans, for example. I must say that my company is one of the top users of some of the softwares that belongs to Schneider. So I can tell they do this and it works well. And he's bringing us today some concrete examples on how we can build such a continuity plans and how we can at the same time reduce the total cost of ownership. And this is also related to the democratization that Paco was telling us before, because then we are going to talk about cost, which is very important for small companies. So Stefan, the floor is yours now.
Yeah, thank you very much, Alicia, for this introduction, and thank you, Paco and Joy, for your for sharing your experience. And it fits indeed very well, because after looking at this, at what Joe has explained, I really love the outcome-based economy, and you, Paco, how these small companies needs technology. I will go now through very operational things, by the way, saying how Schneider is helping its customer to stay resilient, and you will see how we've been working with organizations like your organization to maximize business and operational resilience using digital services. So, as many of you are aware, business resiliency has always been a priority. It's not new. But over the past several months, the crisis has made it one of, if not the top priority for businesses everywhere in the world. The focus on ensuring business and operational continuity has been highlighted as a crucial element to any organization weathering the current crisis. But it will be equally important to maintain focus on business continuity planning as we emerge from the crisis. And as Joe was saying, we're going now to enter in the recovery phase or what we call now the new normal. Now, as we move forward, there will be incidents like the crisis we had with the COVID. And these incidents will impact businesses. So economists are already discussing about the post-COVID-19 recession. The climate change is still there, and this is another disruption that is going to happen. And we'll have other unforeseen global and local incidents that will continue to impact business operation in the future. This is a fact, and we will not change that. Whoops. So what we've learned in 2020, and that was highlighted by the COVID-19 crisis, is that our current reality has accelerated the digital transformation for everyone and every organization. The acceleration of digital as organization focusing on 5 things. 1, the remote everything. It is now imperative that all operational assets and process are connected so that visibility and action can be taken at any time from anywhere. And this is valid for big and small companies. Second, operational resiliency. Organizations are asking themselves, when unforeseen events happen, how do we weather the storm? What strategies do we have in place to make sure our operations can adapt and perform during tough times? Number 3, business continuity planning. How can we plan ahead to mitigate risks that haven't happened yet? And what does our plan look like if something unforeseen happens, so that we can manage it and recover as quickly as possible? Of course, as we are in a completely connected world, cybersecurity. Everything being connected, organizations know that being cyber secure is a top priority. Finally, you need to have trusted partnerships. So leading organizations know they can't do everything by themselves. The key for them and for everyone will be to partner with trusted experts who intimately know their customers' industries, that have demonstrated success, and will be around in tough time to ensure their customers' operational and business resiliency are top priorities. So we have 5 here. You see 5 criteria for staying resilient. But then let's go a bit in the operational, I mean, in the concrete side of things. How do we help our customers to stay resilient? So we articulate our value proposition around 3 main pillars. The first one is what we call the remote essentials. The second one is on-site essentials. And we are also contributing to a customer business continuity planning efforts to ensure their future resilience. So looking in detail, with remote essentials, we utilize remote monitoring of critical assets to obtain data, which is key for informed decision making. So we deploy dashboards, we deploy analytics and reports to ensure the aggregate data is useful, understandable, and actionable. And we have the remote experts in our connected services hub, or called also our service bureau, that advise and work directly with customers to ensure effective action is taken to optimize operational assets and deploy efficiencies. So what we've observed in the last year, we observed a growth of 50% of what we call assets under management connected to Schneider. 50% growth. The second one is the on-site essential. Of course, when you have some recommendation coming from the remote, you need to execute that. So our on-site experts here on this pillar are able to ensure guaranteed services level, make sure that spare parts are available. We have dedicated supply chain that can serve our customers, and we can also provide on-site assessments, either on-site or even remotely. So we need to connect the remote and the on-site to make sure that we are able to operationalize what we are monitoring. And this is very important. If not, it stays at analytics level and then nothing happens. So we have a lot of field service engineers on the world. So Schneider is one of the biggest organizations for that. So more than 6,600 people that are on duty 24/7 and 365 days a year, and are there to support all this resiliency program. So we also help the customers to plan for the future. So we are contributing to their business continuity planning efforts, assisting with the digital modernization project, and providing cybersecurity and energy management services. So we have over 430 service centers globally that support our customer operational and business continuity planning. So we have a full set of capability on that. So let's look at the third pillar. Very interesting, and this is the topic of the day. So at Schneider, we use the following definition of business continuity. We said business continuity is planning and preparation to ensure that an organization will continue to operate in case of serious incidents or disasters, and is able to cover to an operational state within a reasonably short period. So this is the definition we have and on which we are building our support to customers. So what does this practically translate for an organization? Let's take the mining, mineral, and metal industry, for example. It means what? It means predicting failures in critical assets, enhancing safety, allowing real-time decision-making, empowering workers, aligning business and operations, and connecting and optimizing operations. And all these elements are integrated through digital connectivity, which enable the correct action to take place at the correct time to ensure efficiencies and optimize operations, which results in business continuity. So it's a complete package that is interconnected. So moving forward, when we look at business continuity planning, it's important to take a consultative and circular approach. We do this in order to maximize the results, and the process begins with a comprehensive audit of your operational equipment, systems, and processes. We need to understand your setup. After the audit, we perform a risk assessment, and the resulting report is used to identify and prioritize risk to business operations. The third step is defining the strategy based on identified current and future risks and what tactical actions need to happen to execute the strategy. For example, connecting or modernizing outdated operational equipment. And finally, the fourth step is implementing the strategy and executing the actions identified in the previous step. The key to this step is monitoring, which is enabled through connecting assets, equipment, and processes. This allows constant visibility and the ability to take preemptive action to address incidents quickly and proactively, so that we ensure operational continuity. Now, I'll dive into a bit more detail on each step, trying to go fast on that. This is the first step. So during the audit, where there is no downtime, it's imperative to analyze your operations' current performance and risks. This is when you really get to know your system and the associated health of the assets that you depend on for your business. A lot of companies just don't know that at all. This step also explores safety risks for people and assets, as well as how prepared you are in case something breaks or needs replacement. So looking at the second step. So after that, that audit, so the result of the audit are explained and discussed, while the risks are evaluated and prioritized with the customers. This is a customized process as each organization has different situations. The result of each step is a customized plan with concrete actions, which includes recommendation for modernization and maintenance strategies. And this leads me to the step number 3. So when defining a strategy that works for your organizations, there are 2 key aspects to integrate. First, the strategy needs to focus on maintenance aspects. How did you plan to optimize the life cycle of your equipment? How do you plan to manage and anticipate equipment failures? By developing solutions that answer these questions, your organization can take a corrective and proactive approach. On the right-hand side, the second component is what we call digital modernization. This means connecting your assets, equipment, and processes, which ultimately gives you visibility to your operations so you can assess, plan, and monitor. By connecting and upgrading equipment, you can improve your OPEX and your CAPEX management while also being proactive when replacing critical equipment. And this concludes the step number 3. Looking at the step number 4, here we speak about implementation, which is of course the step that will make things real. So the first step is implementing the customized solution with the support of expert service providers. As you begin to collect data and gain visibility through your connected assets, you can begin to perform predictive analytics to drive data-driven decisions. Additionally, when partnering with experts like Schneider, for example, let's take that, we can also provide recommendations and actions from your remote experience, from our remote and experienced professionals to help manage and maintain your equipment health. And this is what I was explaining before on what we call the connected services hubs that are 24/7 looking at the data of your connected assets. I mean, and this ultimately means optimizing operational resiliency and executing on business continuity. And this is where we make things real. All the technology is today available, it works. It was not the case 10 years ago, but today this is, I will not use the word democratized, but almost there. And at least we can help companies to acquire this company if they don't have. So I'll take an example, a real example that we have. Paco, I'm sorry, it's not a small and medium-sized business, it's a big business. We speak about BASF in US. Taking this company, I mean, this is a facility of BASF in Texas, where they produce agricultural products. So when we met them, they were challenged to build a state-of-the-art power distribution substation that leverage data-driven services to maximize plant uptime and productivity. Here we speak about the main substation. So BASF also wanted to increase their visibility on the health of the site's prime electrical distribution assets to really understand to which level their business is exposed from a risk standpoint. So we were able to partner with them, and we, at the end of this process, remote monitor 63 critical electrical distribution assets, from which we measure and monitor more than 100 variables, and we were able to provide BASF reliable condition-based monitoring. So this was and is still supported by a 24/7 access to an asset health dashboard, and this is complemented with customized advice and proactive recommendation from our connected services hub to prevent failure and optimize maintenance strategy. So, of course, this solution is completely supported by our industry-leading approach to cybersecurity. And today this is running. And you see that in this concrete example, we have helped BASF to avoid a potential risk of downtime of $1 million per day. So moving forward, I was just explaining the cybersecurity topic. Of course, I said everything is connected and customers are more and more sensitive to cybersecurity topics. So at Schneider, we are committed to providing solutions that support our customer needs for cybersecurity protection across all business types and industries. Our skilled and certified professional vendor agnostic services are helping our customers assess their risks, implement cybersecurity specific solutions, and maintain their defenses over time and locations. What's unique about our approach is that we understand and apply cybersecurity solution from an OT standpoint, an operational perspective, while integrating the appropriate IT policies and requirements. So you see, we apply a deep cybersecurity knowledge and experience within the context of critical operational systems and deliver customized and flexible solutions. Understanding the critical needs to monitor and maintain cybersecurity protection throughout assets, equipment, and system operational lifecycle is key. And of course, cybersecurity starts with and is owned by people. We share our knowledge and experience with our customers to develop the cybersecurity mindset that is critical today and more so in the future as organizations' digital transformations continue to accelerate. And we will see that at the end with some couple of data points. So moving to another concrete example, this time not in US, but in UK, moving to a beverage industry company. This company has 141 global manufacturing sites, and they were needing a cybersecurity solution that met their needs. So we are able to deploy multi-factor authentication with them, enable configuration and user management, as well as threat analysis and patch management in all their facilities. So since we approach cybersecurity from an OT perspective, they knew we understood their industry and their operational needs, as well as the regulations and best practices they required to keep their equipment and process protected. Oh, and I see there's a bug in the animation, but okay, no issue with that. So I gave you a picture of how do we define business resiliency? What are the key topics on which Schneider is experts, and how do we support with a 4-step process our customers in their transformation? Gave you two very concrete examples on how we are helping customers to stay resilient, how we are helping customers to make sure that in this digital transformation, they are cyber secure. So now you may ask yourself how to start that. So I would say, well, it's quite simple. So if you have any Schneider products, you can download the app called My Schneider app to register the product and get a free asset obsolescence report. You will receive a free or on-demand report that provides a criticality assessment of your site and recommendation you can take to minimize your risk, first level. Or if you don't have any Schneider assets, I mean, you can just call us and we will then be able to make a first step site assessment. We can do that on site. You've seen we have more than 6,000 people, or we can do it even remotely. We have all the technology to do that. So once we understand your facility, operational process, equipment, and assets, we can build your plan with you. And depending on your specific situation, we can make the right recommendation and actions for you dedicated to your particular situation. This could involve remote monitoring of your asset to creating customized dashboard and reports to help you understand your operation and ensure you are making the right decisions to optimize your operational effectiveness and resulting in ensuring your business resiliency and continuity. And I will finish by a couple of thought leadership figures or data points. So we worked with a very well-known company called IDC, and we've together written this white paper called Maximizing Business and Operational Resilience through Services. By the way, as a special thank for you attending this session, we will be sending you a link to download this brand new white paper that we published just a couple of weeks ago on our website. So based on this research, IDC found that 75% of companies have committed to the digital transformation journey, but only 25%, 1/4, have reached mature levels. IDC also surveyed over 1,400 business decision makers and found that understanding equipment performance is increasingly important to them, especially to mission critical facilities, of course. So IDC believes that many organizations, more or less 40%, are overestimating their ability to accomplish this internally. Currently, only 9% of those surveyed rely on an external third party, a percentage that will likely increase as more organizations understand the complexity of improving asset performance. So, to accelerate progress in improving facility resiliency, digital services such as remote monitoring and analysis are emerging as a path to understanding equipment performance and shifting to condition-based maintenance. These services also streamline the maintenance process. So IDC believes that without the support of new digital services, the increased complexity of operation management will prove to be an overwhelming task for most enterprises. And what we start to see that early innovators are leveraging digital services to drive improvements and ease the burden on the internal organization. So you will see in this report that this is where your peers are on their digital transformation journey. So now asking you the question, where does your organization stand? I mean, and this is, I will leave you with this question, and this will be my final word. So thanks again for attending. I will pass the ball back to Alicia, I think, for questions. Alicia, handing over to you.
Yeah, thank you, Stéphane. Merci. Because we are going to move to questions, I ask all the panelists to switch on their cameras so we can see and each other, and also the audience can see each other. Thank you very much, Stéphane, for the presentation. I have noted down some things that I would keep for myself. Is these 5 things that any company should focus on: remote everything, operational resilience, a business continuity plan, cybersecurity, and trusted partnerships. So this is something for me to take back home. Thank you very much. So we've got some questions. First, Stéphane, I wanted to check. You mentioned the COVID crisis at the beginning, but not very specific. Has the kind of questions, the kind of insights the clients are asking you, have they changed in these last months? What kind of impact you have observed?
Yeah. I understand. So, I mean, in the last, I mean, now we start to see the things recovering a bit, even if it's not yet full speed. But I will answer you with a few data points actually. So what we've seen in our, I mean, I'm leading the digital service organization, and what we've seen really skyrocketing in the last 3 months is our customer satisfaction, right? Which is extremely interesting to analyze, because it's the customer satisfaction is just moving +1 point, -1 point, and suddenly we've seen a kind of increase like 30%. It was just huge. So what does it mean, and how do I translate that? I mean, that means that customers are really appreciating the value of the services in this time of crisis. It's very important. We speak about trusted partners. We speak about relying on companies that are still there in tough times. And this is where you see, because everybody can have this philosophical or theoretical positioning, saying, okay, we will be there for you, you know, the insurance model. But when tough times are happening, this is where you see. So we've seen this customer satisfaction increasing. So we see the value of the service there. And we classified our customers in basically two categories. So the first category of customers are the ones who are maintaining or increasing their operations. So for example, in the essential segments like healthcare, right? So these customers are really benefiting from the resiliency, are able to leverage the full spectrum of services. So they need to stay resilient, these mission critical processes. The second kind of customer that we have are customers who have been hit by the crisis. Their model has just collapsed and they have slowed down or they completely shut down their operation. For these customers, when we observe so we work with these customers, they went into a kind of sleep mode, right? And we are now, I mean, we started in the middle of the crisis to work with them, make sure that we can help them through our services to come back to business when the things are going to restart. And here again, we offer them a lot of services. I was speaking about digital modernization. Some of these customers that went into sleep mode, for example, airports, right? They really called us saying, guys, I really need to modernize my equipment. I'm shut down now. So how can I do that? And install an inbuilt digital solution so that next time when things are happening, I can really monitor and make sure things are better managed. I don't hear you. I think you muted. You muted, Alicia.
Thank you. Yeah, thank you, Stefan. We had a similar question to this one addressed to Joe about, it was Alistair Stewart. How do you think, what is your opinion about the strategy for innovation under uncertainty? So if you think things should be different to any safer environment?
Sounds almost like a trick question. And I know it isn't, but this is the way it sounds like. So maybe I need to try to explain what I think Alistair means by that. Innovation is really not part of resilience. I mean, the idea is resilience comes from stability. So in a stable business, you don't change anything. You keep working using the same model. So you don't necessarily innovate. You don't disrupt, because this is a sign of instability. At the same time, organizations have to show life, to have vitality, to keep innovating. So as I said earlier, it's the vitality versus stability equation that is very, very difficult to manage. And so obviously, even in times like today, when we put everything under the rubric of resilience, what we really mean is manage the crisis, weather the storm, try to lose as little as we can in terms of customers, in terms of employees and so on, and certainly in terms of cash flow. So this is a difficult question, and I think that it's a big test for companies, whether in this difficult time, they cannot give up on innovation, maybe change the cadence a little bit, but not give up innovation. It's kind of interesting, it's a very timing question that Alistair has. Just the other day, there was kind of discussion. I do a lot of work in the automotive industry, and I'm sure everybody knows about electric vehicles and primarily Tesla versus traditional car makers, and the battle between the two. And traditional car makers, Ford and GM and others, were very slow to join the electric vehicle war, if you will, because in parts they didn't believe that it was so critical. Also, they believed that they can control the cadence of innovation. So they did not believe that Tesla can come and innovate and disrupt the business. So years go by, and as you know now, Tesla has had probably 3 profitable quarters. And the other car makers are still trying to figure out where they are in terms of electrification. And now I'm getting to the point. So just the other day, Ford announced that they're going to stop or maybe temporarily or just cancel their electrification initiatives. So what's happening now? So they go into they hunker down, go into a resilience management mode. they stop investing in electric vehicles, whereas Tesla now, because they're in good shape, they have a lot of cash, continue doing that, continue to develop market, continue to develop their brand. So by the time Ford comes out of this protection mode, they may have lost so much more time, not only in terms of technology innovation, but also in terms of market leadership and brand. So to sum it up, under resilience mode, again, the protection mode, we still have to be smart about how do we continue driving innovation. So maybe it's small innovation, maybe it's other areas that are not as burdensome, but we need to do this because we need to prepare to be there when we're out of this crisis. It's a great question.
Thank you, Joe. We've got a question that wasn't addressed to anybody in particular, but I think Paco could answer it. This person asks, what are the first steps would you recommend to us so that we could offer and implement industrial IoT solutions to our customers? So the question here is, if I am a smaller company, what would you advise, concrete advice, so that we can start moving?
Okay, so the first thing is that they need to start trusting in the advisor. That's very important for the small and medium company, because like I said at the beginning in my presentation, these companies don't receive every day to visitors from Schneider here or Cisco, Microsoft, or all these big companies. So when they decide to talk with an independent advisor, like in my case, first thing is that they need to trust in us. The second thing is that they need to be prepared to change, because I know that it's very difficult for companies that has been running for, like I said, decades. It's complicated to say now that they need to change. That's only because they will introduce some technology, but it's not the like I said, it's not the reality. It's that because maybe some employees are becoming old and they cannot continue, working for forever. Or maybe because some machines are, obsolete, they don't have a replacement. So there are many areas in which they can improve. So it's not about only the, like I said, industrial Internet of Things technologies. It's about a change of paradigm of this small and medium company. The other thing that for me is important is when I talk with the companies is they need to have a strategy. I always insist, not only the big companies need a strategy. The small companies, of course, you don't need to, to have 100-page document with the strategy, but you need to know how do you see your company in 3 years, in 5 years, and then create a plan year by year, and then you can adjust this plan for every year. Then in this plan, you need to think about, refine your mission, your vision, and then how are you make it? Are you, a company that makes some product? How can you improve your product? Maybe with connected product. Are you thinking about how can you serve better to your customer? How do you interact with your customer? Is something that you sell to the customer and forget, or you need an interaction? So the main concern for these small companies is that they need to think like a big company, in spite they don't have the resources, and they need to be very clever with all they have, and with the support by other maybe small and medium companies. They don't need to make everything by themselves. This is another mistake that many companies, small and medium companies, that you don't need to be an expert in marketing, an expert in manufacturing, an expert in packaging, in distribution, right? So just be focused, make your company grow in which is your core business, and try to create an ecosystem that helps you to create, your new company for the future. Because the future will be, for me, more resilience if all the companies work with ecosystem. So strategy is important. Use cases and focus is the second. Adaptation and learning for the people that they have, and ecosystem. That would be my 4 advice for this company.
Thank you, Paco. Lucian just told me we have to close early. So last question, Stefan. We had several questions about the balance on how many solutions are based on energy management compared to resilience. Also, we had some questions about the pricing model for this kind of solutions. So I don't know if you can summarize very, very quickly.
Yeah, I started to answer on the chat. I'm typing right now, so I answered the question on the pricing. So the pricing is of course a very. The question was, I mean, is the pricing policy a per asset type of policy, or is it something else? It really depends on basically two things. How critical are the assets? Of course, if you are, for example, I'll take an example. You take single phase UPS is very small, you know, UPS is like this in retail chain or in office. It's not critical, but here we will go more for assets multiplied by a fee per month. Now, if you are on an offshore platform and we discuss with the customer on limiting or improving the uptime and limiting the unplanned downtime that can cost $1 million per hour, the service level agreement will not be the same. So the pricing will be more based on risk of avoidance and service level agreement, because in front of that, of course, we have to put different means. So there is no rule, but depending on the typology of business, we will adapt.
But maybe Stefan, you can make a big announcement today here. I don't know if you are able to do that. A big announcement. During the next 6 months, you will not buy until the companies make outcome with the technology of Schneider.
I will not what? Sorry.
No, I said that if you can announce now a big announcement today that the companies will not pay for the next 6 months.
Oh, wait. It's not this. Look, we are offering, no, it's not a joke. We today, during the crisis in particular, for very specific critical segments, we offered like 3 months free trial, right? For example, on alarming on UPS, if I continue with my example of inverters. So it was free so that the customer can test. If it's fine, it's fine. If not, he can disconnect, that's it. So we did that, and we still have some policies of free trial or freemium or things like this. Yeah, it's not a joke. It's not a joke.
Thank you, Stefan. Of course, thank you to Paco and Joe as well. We need to close now. So any other question that has not been addressed, we will answer them to social networks or through email, private emails. I have put in the chat the link to that for you to download the IDC report that Stefan was saying, so you can the audience can copy it before. And the only thing is that for me, it has been a very interesting panel, learning how to go from the business strategic thinking of things that Joe has offered us, going down to how the smaller pieces, the smaller companies fit in this strategy, and finally going to something more in detail, more down to earth about how we can implement these strategies at the end. Thank you, the three panelists, for your insights. Thank you to the organization for giving us the opportunity to be here to enjoy this panel. And of course, thank you to all the audience for attending the session, and see you next time.
Thank you
very much. Bye-bye. Have a nice day.
Thank you to the attendees, and thank you our sponsor for joining us. Have a great rest of the day.